Hello, everyone, and happy holidays to you all. Thank you for joining us for our Coffee with Case Manager webinar. This webinar is going to focus on peer-to-peer learning. We offer practical insights. We share real examples and stories and solutions. Today, we'll be discussing how to help high-risk members avoid holiday isolation. Please feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A section on the bottom of the screen, and we'll answer them all at the end of the session if time allows. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy. I'm lucky to have DixMarie with me, who is a care coordinator from Presbyterian Health Plan in New Mexico. I'll let her introduce herself first, and then I'll share a little about myself. Hello and welcome, DixMarie.
Hey, Sherri, thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. Like you said, I'm a Presbyterian Health Plan Care Coordinator. I came on board January of 2020. What a great decision, knowing what happened after to the world with COVID. I am from New Orleans, born in Southern Arizona, but lived almost my entire life in New Orleans until I moved here literally 7 years ago this month. I graduated from Tulane with my master's in social work in 2013, but honestly, everything that I've learned about human connection, about resource needs came through the hospitality industry. You'll never convince me that restaurant work, hospitality is not care work. I've also worked with underserved communities, disenfranchised youth, our unhoused kin, and our intellectually and developmentally disabled folks and other marginalized and underserved communities. Again, really happy to be here.
Well, thank you. Nice to have you. And hello again, everyone. I'm Sherri Gerber-Somers. I'm a licensed social worker in the very cold state of Michigan right now, very snowy, except we're getting rain today and it's going to be almost 50 degrees, which blows my mind, but we'll see. And then we get more snow tomorrow. But I'm licensed in the state of Michigan. I'm a certified health coach. I'm a certified senior advisor. I'm also the senior manager of social care at Best Buy Healthcare, and I have been with the company for over 11 years, and I'm very excited to join DixMarie today. I'm going to talk a little bit and share some slides, and then we're going to have a conversation about the holidays. So on this slide, you can read Best Buy's goal to empower people to age safely and independently. Everything we do centers around this goal, including the help we provide from the social care department. So how do we do that? We partner with organizations like yours who serve older adults every day. This includes senior living communities, Medicaid plans, and Medicare Advantage plans. Best Buy has spent decades perfecting how to make technology work in the homes with services such as Geek Squad, and now we're directing this knowledge to healthcare. We're using this expertise to create a future where delivery of healthcare in the home is tech-enabled and human-centered by developing solutions for consumers to stay well and to get well on their own, or with the support of trusted healthcare providers. So we provide the right technology at the right time and introduce a layer of scalable, value-added services such as social care to ensure that technology is making a difference across the continuum of need. On this slide, you can see that our members are encouraged to press their button or call for any reason. We have no limits on the amount of button pushes they can do. We also don't have call limits for our staff to be able to talk to members. We focus on stressing the quality of the calls instead of the quantity of the calls. And on the slide, you can also see some examples of how our social care team assists. We can assist with basic needs such as food assistance or housing, and we can help schedule doctor appointments with the member and then help them arrange transportation to those appointments if they're struggling with some transportation needs. On the next slide, you can see that our social care team is available to assist with any community resource or emotional support needs, such as anxiety or depression that our members may have. We advocate for your members, such as, for example, it might be that we are setting up a payment plan for their utilities or calling the electrical company during a power outage to advocate for the needs to make them a priority. The social care team is here for any needs that your members may have. All right, we're moving on from the slides and let's chat with DixMarie. All right, DixMarie, we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges we have. We know the holiday season can be a challenging time for many. So, as a care coordinator, how do you approach conversations with your members?
So that is the ongoing question, right? I mean, the holidays are fraught, right? We're at a moment where it's palpable, right? That uptick in energy all over the place, commercials, right? Any situation that a member's in. Number one for me is listening. And I'm not going to start listening because it's the holiday season. What's very important and integral to me is that radical listening, that holding space, that witnessing, whatever words you want to use for it. I'm starting that early so that that's well established, right? I'm not trying to get in good with a member now. And so to me, that's super important. How do I both decenter myself and really show up and be available for them while also making sure that I'm resourced enough to handle whatever they're giving me?
Wonderful. I love that strategy. What are you seeing most often right now from members, like in terms of seasonal or emotional challenges?
So what's interesting is that it is typically more of the same. So I want to know my members really well. So if a really talkative member is a little quiet, that's different for them. Usually there's an increase in frustration. Sometimes there's an increase in like they just shut down more, right? So that's something to notice. A big thing for me that I notice is grief. There's grief is kind of the unspoken thing. I think that we don't talk about enough how that shows up in the room. It's not a linear process. The holidays can really bring up that sense of isolation and grief and loss of loved ones or loss of important relationships, even if that person is still alive.
Yeah, we actually had a member's spouse who the member passed away, and the
Mm.
spouse called in to talk to the social care team because even though they didn't have the device, they were still grieving and know how beneficial our services were to the member and just wanted to reach out. So grief is huge this time of year, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. I think that whatever is happening day to day, there's just sort of this intense pressure around the holidays, and there can be a lot of isolation. Maybe people who normally drop in, right? Family members, like maybe their time and attention, right? We've talked about goes in other places. So these members of ours, they're actually getting fewer visits, they're getting fewer calls because the people in their lives are pulled in more directions because of the holidays. And again, while there is this season of giving, let's face it, for many of us, that means a season of spending. And our members are not necessarily in the position of spending, but yet they still want to participate and they still want to give. So, how do we help them celebrate the wins? Oh, you're bringing in your neighbor's mail? You're putting that package closer to the door. Maybe you're rolling the cans in and out because that's what you can do, or you're calling them, or you're sharing the bounty of something you got. I want to celebrate all those wins with members that don't necessarily include them spending money.
Oh, such important points. We also noticed that caregivers, the focus of the holidays was always on giving and other people, and caregivers spend so much of their time focused on other people. But during the
Yeah,
holidays, sometimes you need to focus on yourself as well, and they can struggle sometimes with
yeah,
that and taking care of all the responsibilities that come along with the holidays that are
yeah,
additional. And in addition to usually there's some grief and loss and the things that we've talked about as well. So it can be a
yeah,
challenging time for caregivers as well.
yeah. I mean, this week alone, we were talking about recognizing signs. I always expect if the weather is terrible that I'm going to get some cancellations or some requests for reschedule. And I'm fortunate that my employer, knowing that I'm on the road for a majority of my job, does not expect me to travel in inclement weather. But back to the point, I get a lot of like this week alone, even though the weather has been pretty lovely where I am in northern New Mexico, I've had a lot of cancellations because it's December. People literally do not have the energy here at the end of the year to go through with something. And it's my responsibility to let them know, hey, here's what's required, here's what we can reschedule, because they still have control over many things, and informed consent is important. So if they need to miss, if they need to reschedule, I just make sure that we're getting done what's required, and then everything else we can figure out.
Do you find that you're on the phone more during this time, or is the rescheduling usually will work?
So both, and I've been on the phone, I had in-person cancellations, which, then I'm like, okay, I can use this time to make phone calls. I'm already looking at the members that I know may be a little more susceptible to holiday isolation, grief, the tension. So I was on the phone a lot more this week, able to make some calls. Also, we have an option that came in the last year or so where we can do drop-in visits. Now, I'm not saying unplanned, right? I never just show up at my member's door. I want the same courtesy, that I
Yes.
extend, give them the same courtesy I extend to myself. It's like, no, you got to let me know you're coming. However, it can be a brief visit. Hey, here's this flyer, or I wanted to, did you know about this resource? And so I'm leveraging that as well, right? If I'm already on the
Good.
road,
Sure.
I'm going to do that drop in. And it's up to me to be able to know how to land the plane or leave. It's not meant to be a 30-minute visit or an hour
Definitely not
visit.
30 hours either.
Right. Oh my God. I know, it's like sometimes it feels that way, but but it's meant to be a brief visit. And if I know that member's chatty, I'm not going to avoid that member. That's not fair. It's up to me. I'm the person in the role that needs to know, like, I want to see this member. I want to make sure they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel recognized, but also know, like, hey, if you want to talk more, I have some time tomorrow. Should I call you? Okay, great. Right.
Those
And
check-in
then,
times are, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, please. Yeah. Check-in
I
times.
think the check-in times also show that you care. I think it's another way to show that you are there, you're being
Yes.
supportive, you're there if they need
Yes.
you, and it's just a way to show someone you care, which
Yeah.
is
Hard agree.
especially important right now during the holiday time.
hmm Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the signs of holiday isolation. What early cues do you look for on those calls or visits that we're talking about?
So I often think about like I have this subset, I call my salty members, right? My members that are in chronic pain, who maybe they ran out of nice, right, in the 90s, right? So they don't have a whole lot of nice, and that's okay, right? But I'm going to notice if a member is particularly salty or is having a lot more frustration with something that doesn't usually cause them frustration, right? So there's or maybe it's task paralysis, which I think can happen to anybody, but they can't even complete simple tasks for themselves, and they're really relying more on other people. Or, like I said earlier, they go silent. They are on lockdown emotionally. They are compartmentalizing. Their mindset is like, this is a thing I just got to get through. And life maybe will look different, January 2nd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or there are the members that don't call. If they call a lot, um, or they start calling a lot, I just make sure that I'm available. I, you know, maybe I don't need to talk to them or feel capable to talk to them in the moment, but I return calls because they're calling me for a reason. And I want to make sure that I follow through with that, right? Especially if they don't usually call. I try to answer the phone whenever possible. I'm not trying to give myself a pat on the back. It's just a commitment I've made to myself. I want to be available to them.
It sounds like you really know your members. So if you're talking to them and they have
Yes.
a different affect, you can kind of pick up on that, that something's going on.
Yeah.
Something's going
Yeah.
on.
Right.
And
Which starts way back. If I were to just start showing up now and just being like, hey, I think that, members are smart. I want to see them in their full humanity. They're going to know. They'll be like, what is up with her? What is this about? So I just try to have a conversational relationship, right? Not clinical, but conversational. And really, like I said, see them in their full humanity and let them express whatever they need to express. And then still be able to hold a boundary. It sounds like you're really overwhelmed. It doesn't sound like it's a good time. Would you agree? Could I call you back? instead of, in my mind, I may be like, why is this person yelling at me? It is triggering me a
Uh,
100,000 different
it's
ways.
a great way to
Right.
phrase it.
Yes, exactly. And they may need it too, but they may not recognize it because once our nervous system is activated, right? We're the zebra and it's the lion, right? It's not, we're not on the phone with somebody, right? It's that literal part of the reptile brain that fight, flight, freeze, right? These things that we may be familiar with.
Yeah, all important. In talking about holiday isolation, I just wanted to share too, recognizing signs that social care recently paired up with a partner and we did a pilot social isolation program. It was a 12-week program where we made weekly and then bi-weekly outbound calls. And we facilitated different assessments to evaluate, again, talking about trying to catch it early to evaluate the members' isolation risks. So for members who completed all 4 of those assessments during the 12-week pilot, the results showed an overall reduction in social loneliness. The social loneliness is, think of it kind of like feeling like you don't belong or feeling like you lack a broad network of friends or community. And it reduced that by 12.9%. And then emotional loneliness. So think of missing kind of deep, intimate connections with one or more people kind of surrounded by others that you love. So missing that emotional loneliness decreased by 8.7%. So over half the members also requested to continue their communication and engagement with the staff too. So they really look forward to those scheduled calls. And we really felt like we were making a difference and when we were connecting with them. So again,
See,
catching that early. Hopefully we avoided some of the holiday isolation by doing that a little
yeah,
earlier in the year.
yeah. And the literal data supports that, right? There's the information
Yeah.
that you all gleaned from this pilot program. And, you can spend no time at all researching on the internet the impacts of loneliness, right? And we have a lot of information about the health impacts of loneliness. It kills more people than heart disease. That's
Mm.
real. So even being able to just show up briefly and saying, how are you doing? And not looking at the member as a problem to fix, but
Yeah.
as another human being in need of care.
Love that. I love that. And when you talk about heart disease, it's something well, maybe you can control leading up, but it gets a little trickier to control once it's there. But I think with this, it's something we can control a little more. We can change. We can do something about. We can really make a difference and help somebody.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, can you share a moment when recognizing holiday isolation early prevented a member's situation from getting worse? Do you have any examples that you could share?
Yeah, I feel like so I have a bigger example that I'll hold off on for now because I think it's pretty powerful, but I like sort of like the what I might call low-hanging fruit, but yet still important. I have a member who is just vexed by technology, and the she doesn't have a lot of natural supports, and so she got an updated alarm device, and neither she nor the caregiver could get it sorted. So I went and I helped her do that. And I was already in town and I have the employer support to do a quick drop in visit. Now, could I do that for a 70-member caseload every day, right? Ad infinitum? Maybe not. But I know that this member, like all of this increase in frustration had a lot to do with this early holiday isolation. She can't walk. She like to the like she has great difficulty walking. She doesn't have transportation, and her life looks a lot different now, and she gets very easily frustrated. And then the other example I think is I have a member whose birthday is in this month, and she also has had a number of family members pass away in December. So I just make sure she's been on my caseload for 5 years, but I make sure that even if it's not time to call her, that I'm reaching out to her. And I did. And she's like, D, because a lot of my members call me D. She's like, thank you so much for calling and for thinking of me. And it was just, and I could do that because I know my member and I'm also ready with the tools that my employer and my skill set provide me.
Something so simple, but can have such a big impact.
Yeah.
I saw that Olivia posted in the chat. I can talk a little more about that. But since Thanksgiving is another example of something that we've been doing, like you were just talking about, DixMarie, the social care team at Best Buy Health has been proactively reaching out to members. We've been checking on them to explore if they have any social determinants of health needs or if they just want to talk. Like we've been talking about here, we know the holiday time can be challenging. So we were trying to recognize social or holiday isolation and trying to prevent it, reminding them they can press their button if they need any emotional support. We also have been sending some holiday cards to members who have no family support or no social network. And then resources. There are the obvious ones we've been talking about, but also things we might not think about, like therapeutic resources. So during this time, maybe someone needs a support group or individual counseling within their community that we can help them to arrange. So we've been busy making these outbound calls, and we really, like you were talking about, we really feel like we're making a difference. So warm fuzzies all the
Yeah.
way around for everybody.
And you all are an active leader in that. I appreciate that. I have that same member that's tech challenge. She doesn't have the grip strength anymore, and she could not get her shower turned off, and it's very, very difficult. And she does use her device a lot because she does fall. But this time she used her device because she couldn't get in touch with her landlord, and she was worried her apartment was going to flood. And so she called the dispatch, and they got the appropriate entity out there, which was non-emergency fire department, but they were able to help her until her landlord could. So,
Love that.
again,
Yeah, it's a great
just
example.
I was like, well, that's a success story. I'm glad she didn't fall, but I'm also
Sure.
glad her apartment didn't flood because that would be a big deal.
That's great that she thought to use it for that reason because
Yeah,
people think just emergencies and we do so many more things than just help with emergencies. So
yeah.
that's wonderful that she thought to do that and that we were able to help her. It's a great example. We're talking a lot about members and holidays, but what about holiday isolation for our peers? We know that it can also impact our peers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, as I've already mentioned, I mean, if there's one theme that you're going to hear from me is that I talk a lot about what I have, what I can do, right? My resources, because that is my primary focus. We've heard it you can't pour from an empty container. You need to put your oxygen mask on first. There's lots of ways that we reference this, but I'm only as resourced as I feel resourced emotionally, spiritually, maybe financially, right? All of these very real, concrete, and even emotional, spiritual needs. So I do focus a lot on honest self check ins. How am I? I have this thing I have to do today. Can I do it now? Sometimes I postpone the hard thing because I really don't have the spoons. If you all aren't familiar, spoon theory, it's a way of using spoons as a unit of emotional and physical energy. Sometimes you wake up with 100 spoons and things take one spoon to use to complete. And sometimes you wake up with 10 spoons and even getting out of bed and getting yourself dressed takes 5 spoons, right? So you all can do some research about that. I'm deeply into spoon theory. But I want to make sure that I can do it. So postpone the hard thing. Sometimes I'm going to be better off and just have a free and clear mindset if I do the hard thing first, right? But I have to know myself well enough to do that. I'm going to give myself grace. That same grace and that same positive intent that I am extending to other people, I have to be on my list first, right? There's not enough bath bombs that are going to help me with burnout or feeling overwhelmed. I'm going to connect my ability to do well in life, personally, professionally, in all areas, in my ability to connect my self care to community care. I don't think you can see it, but I have one of my favorite little postcards behind me says, "We're all in this together." That's a value I live by. Um, yeah.
Perfect. We focus so much on our members and we're talking about peers, but self-care and taking care of yourself, especially this time of year, all the time, but
Yeah.
especially this time of year. We are in a profession where everybody kind of comes before us. So focusing on ourselves, I think, is crucial. So excellent point. Excellent point.
Yeah.
We've been would like to switch focus a little bit and talk about different barriers and social determinants that may be linked to isolation. So, when you think of social determinants of health, what factors of social determinants of health do you think make members more vulnerable during the holidays? Anything that pops to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, the thing, I know so many people that housing is an issue. They are 1 to 3 paychecks away from complete financial ruin, right? These are folks that are, what we might call everyday folks, people that we wouldn't expect to see on our caseload. So those that isolation that comes from living rurally, but just because you're in a city, if you lack transportation, if you don't have natural supports, you are just as isolated and maybe more isolated because rural folks, I live semi-rurally and my neighbors and I may not agree. Like the Venn diagram of overlap for a lot of things may be kind of narrow, but if I need help, they have my back.
Mm.
And so I think that just whatever issue people are facing, it can just seem so much more amplified at the end of the year with the back-to-back holidays, especially around resources, transportation, right? We know a lot about food. We talked about, there's a plethora, there's a number of food resources. If you can't get there, and they don't deliver, how is that going to help you? Right? If you have a caregiver, but you don't have a car and your caregiver doesn't have a car, and you're very challenged by the technology of booking a ride through a transportation service, then that's going to have limited value. If you have to choose between food and heating your home, right? Which a lot of people do. They're all priorities. How are you going to prioritize within the priorities?
I actually have ends up being a great story regarding two of the things you were just talking about, food insecurities and transportation, which we both help with in the social care team. So we received a call last Christmas time, and there was a woman who had 5 kids and did not have access to a Christmas dinner. And it was Christmas Eve. So it was a very difficult time to try to find, as you can imagine, for anyone to try to find resources for the next day. But we called and we called all these places and there was no transportation. We were able to find a place that would give her a Christmas dinner, but we had to get transportation there and we just could not find a place. So the last place we tried, though, we reached the owner of the company, and he said he didn't have any staff who could drive, but that he would love to be able to pick her up and her kids and bring them to this location and get what they needed within the community. And we're able to bring all the food. They actually gave them presents, and they were able to have a beautiful Christmas dinner the next day. So again, partnering with a community resource that really was able to help. It was a really good feel-good moment. So that was kind of helping with both situations that you were talking about regarding food and transportation.
That's awesome. That same member that is tech challenged, sometimes that saltiness, she's able to just, harness it. And she called the senior center where she gets herself, on the bus and off the bus every day. And her ride fell through to an emergency dentist appointment and they took her. And so she was able to keep that appointment. And again, celebrating every win. And
Yeah.
who knows what constellation of things happened to get her to that place where she felt like she could do that. The fact is that she did it. And on the other side of it, we're like, great, awesome, right? So we're going to acknowledge that at every moment, no matter how small, because it's not small to her.
We're talking about community partnerships or any local resources like we've been talking about. They can be very helpful. They can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Um, like an example can be a local senior center that offers the holiday meals. The situation I was just talking about, we actually had a member that called in Monday asking us to explore community resources for holiday gifts for himself. He didn't have any presents coming his way that he was expecting for the holiday season, and he was just kind of sad and really wanted some gifts. Nothing in particular, whatever they wanted to deliver. He just wanted to feel special and feel valued. And we were able to find community resources a few who were actually able to put him on the list kind of a last minute and get him some gifts. And again, rewarding. Any other community partnerships or resources that Presbyterian or you individually use to help your members?
I mean, I am a kind of a research nerd. So if something comes across, if there's a banner, I'm going to watch the video, I'm going to look at the resource. So, because I do feel like there's Presbyterian is large. And so there's a lot of resources internally. But I also have a personal life. So I'm just always try to be aware and up to date on what is available, especially around virtual care. Can we have virtual urgent care? We've got virtual behavioral health, dermatology, virtual primary care. So solving for that, but then also do they have the technology? How might we be able to help them? So I just try to do my best to stay up to date. In my personal life, I volunteer for a mutual aid organization. I mean, think of it like an angel network. That might be a term that's a little more familiar to people. And even though this doesn't directly benefit my members, I feel like we're putting good into the world. And I'm a believer that abundance is infinite. So it's going to come back around. We did an ask for $150 for a half cord of wood for a family, mostly raising their grandchildren, and who decided to buy food instead of wood because they could only make one choice. And not only did we get them that half cord and meet that $150 through this angel network, social media, in 36 hours, we raised $900. This is one example, and it is more personal, but this is, again, kind of dialing into what may already be out there. So we got them a full cord of wood delivered and a gift card, no strings attached for other expenses. Might be gas, might be food, might be toys for the kids, right? And we were able to give gift cards to 3 other families. So that's one example. I would say if folks are not on
That
social media, someone is. There are these. It's really just about paying attention, and a little bit of luck and a little bit of blessing, just being in the right place at the right time. But these sort of things exist. I want to note. Somebody put in the chat, isolation is just not. It's not about loneliness, but feeling irrelevant. And that is true. We can be in a room full of people. We can have significant relationships and still feel alone. And I think it's important to recognize that it's not the number of people. It is maybe the quality of the relationships, the trust that we have, and our ability to feel safe and held while also being vulnerable and having our needs met.
definitely. And to answer the second part of that question, I see is having success trying to turn a senior from a passive recipient to an active participant. Part of what we do is we help members who want to have volunteer opportunities, which is a great way to get involved. So instead of always taking resources, they really want to give back, and we're able to find different resources of places that they could volunteer that fit their physical limitations or their wants of what they want to do, how they can give back. They have lots of skills, they have experiences they can share. So we've had some really good success stories doing that. Again, warm fuzzies.
Yeah,
All about warm
that's
fuzzies
great.
too.
And it helps them achieve that balance. And maybe that's part of who they were in the world prior to whatever happened to them. And it feeds you. It can really feed your spirit to be able to give or be of service of other people. And we should not exclude our members for that and see them as completely dependent creatures, right?
Yeah.
Love that.
To answer the next question about the community resources for gifts in Southeast Michigan, the example we work with members all over the United States. So the example I was talking about with the gifts was actually in Texas.
Mhm.
But we can reach out, contact information, and see what we can do about helping. If you have members that have our devices, we love to help them find some gifts. So we can definitely look and see what we can do about that.
Awesome.
Get back with you about that. All right, we're going to switch topics here and talk a little bit about tech barriers. We've talked a little bit about this, but how do you help members engage socially when they struggle with devices or connectivity or just understanding tech? As we know, that can be challenging for anybody, but especially for older adults.
Yeah, so this is ongoing. And because by the time you're going to you might be able to help somebody get up to date, right? Technology is like literal light years ahead of us. And so I mean, my strategy is to make sure that I'm up to date, but also, kind of communicate like, yeah, I have a lot of frustration with this as well, right? I'm not coming in as an expert. It's like, let's figure this out together. And also just small, manageable chunks and really like just using common language and not maybe in some cases it's like, is this a teachable moment or do we just need to get this thing done? Like my member was so frustrated at not being able to set up the new device that at that moment I just needed to help her get it done. And maybe we can revisit, right, that teachable moment. But small is all and moving at the speed of trust, which are emergent strategy principles. I did not come up with those. But really just taking a look at the moment and what does the member need, right? What's the immediate solution? What's maybe the medium solution? What's the long-term solution? They don't need to become an IT specialist, right? But how can I help them solve? Can I go over once and help them set up a MyChart account so that they can have access to certain things? Do I help them put that password in a visible area? I know security, right? There may be issues. Having those conversations can lead to other conversations, right? Well, maybe it is a security related issue about their debit card, how to protect their money. I spend a lot of time talking to members about avoiding scams because as soon as they'll call me and they're like, oh, are you all offering X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, tell me more about this call. Well, they had all this information about me, right? So I do my best to try to, assess what is it that they need. And most of it, yes, there's the technical stuff, but a lot of it is helping them distinguish between what's real and not real in the advanced age of scamming.
So important.
Yeah,
Especially right now, unfortunately, during the holidays, the
it's
scams
bananas.
seem to increase.
Yeah.
Um, at Best Buy Health, we help can set up devices as well. We can help step by step if we need to, or go into the home and help set it up. But we also have what's called a digital literacy kind of think of how-to videos. And one of them that we have is actually how to protect yourself against scams. You just reminded me when you were talking about that. But think of things like how to use your iPhone or staying safe online. So we have things like that that we can send videos to members or their loved ones to utilize and watch together and help.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through a situation where you had a member who was at risk for severe holiday isolation and your team was able to change the trajectory for that? Do you have an
Yeah.
example?
Yes, this is the one that I was saying. Like, I think this is a super important one. I had a regular check-in with a phone check-in. I If there's one thing that I know, my members, they have appointments and, they can usually keep those appointments, but they do rely on reminders. So I'm the kind of person, in order for me to be prepared and feel resourced, I often call my members to say, hi, I'm calling you to see when I can call you. So I tend to call them to schedule a call. I always call to schedule an actual in-person visit, but it was time to do a phone check-in. So I called my member and I said, hey, I'm just calling to see when's a good time to call you, tomorrow, next week. And she needed to talk in the moment, which I need to be prepared for. She was very emotional. I checked, we were on the phone for 35 minutes, which is it could be longer than average usually, for those kinds of calls. And I just let her fall apart and just reassured her that I was there. She's got some really intense emotional family cutoffs. But those same relationships, those same people provide her housing because she can't afford it. So there's a certain tension, right? And a guilt and a shame, but also she needs to be on her best behavior. So they don't pull this out from under her. So it's really fraught. But also she's not eating. She can't get around. She used to have a much bigger world. She's very highly formal education, writing. She is pretty tech savvy, but her whole world has crumbled in the last year and a half, and she doesn't recognize who she is. So and she's been not 100% close to behavioral health resources, but not ready, right? And I do move at the speed of trust, but I also know my tools. So when we were talking, I'm like, how can I help? What can I do? Because I have some resources. I've got some medically tailored meals we could talk about. That's a little more than what you're getting now. And I also have some behavioral health resources. That day, I listened to her. At the end of our conversation, she was receptive. And so that's a win. And I was able to get them to her sooner because she does have email, right? Otherwise, I would have printed them out and maybe brought them to her because I could. I called her today. We're going to check in longer tomorrow, but I called her today just to say, hey, 0 to 10. You said you're at a 2, right before Thanksgiving. Where are you now? She's like, I'm at a 6 and I'm ready to reduce the hours that the caregiver comes because I'm walking 2 miles a day. Something shifted
Yeah.
and she decided whatever, right? She had the energy, the spoons, whatever you want to call it. She was able to pivot to this goal she's had for a year and a half, and she's walking and she's not socially isolated and she's driving. Now, cautionary tale, but now's not the time to say, do you really want to put your caregiver down to 1 day a week? We have plenty of time to talk about that. That's where she is now. I'm just here to support her, right? And so that was great. And we didn't even get into the meat and potatoes, but I'm super excited to catch up with her tomorrow because that little 5-minute update was spectacular, very different than the 25th of last month.
Yeah, steps in the right direction. That's so positive.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, super cool.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I guess that's a great note to end on. Um, Thank you for coming. We appreciate your help today, DixMarie. And thank
Absolutely.
you, everyone else, for attending our Coffee with Case Managers webinar. Reminder, this webinar series continues bi-monthly, so feel free to email us if you have questions or if you're interested in speaking. DixMarie, we'd love to have you join me in one of our future sessions, so please let us know. If you would like to listen to this webinar again or share it with a colleague, we will be distributing the recording in a few days, and it will also be on our website. So everyone enjoy your holiday season. Thank you for joining us. Stay warm if you're up north like me, and happy and healthy New Year. Thank you, DixMarie.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Appreciate you being here.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.